Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
All right, so, weather hasn't been that great. It's been quite cold, so I thought I got nothing better to do than just to try out the beta software of iOS 26 and iPadOS 26. I actually had two old devices I could trial it on without, destroying my production, devices here. So, got my 12 Pro Max, so that's my, you can see the home screen there. And I had an iPad mini that I hadn't actually returned to recycling. So we're talking about, I think that's a 5th generation there. So we're talking about a 5-year-old iPhone effectively and a 6-year-old iPad mini. And the thing that kind of surprised me, leaving aside the whether the new liquid glass interface is controversial or not, I was actually surprised at the performance. Now we're talking like some pretty old devices here, and I've always found iOS 18 to be pretty buggy for Apple standards anyway, and I found that whether or not it was a new coat of paint or some new code or whatever it is that they put in there for the interface, that it actually made the device run better than it did before, and it's surprisingly stable. So I thought, that's interesting. That kind of bodes well, unless they screw something up in the next couple of months before the official release. But sometimes I find it's worth trying these things out. If you've got the secondary device handy, of course, because I wouldn't recommend doing this on a on a main phone or anything, just in case something goes wobbly. But I just thought as far as the interface itself is concerned, a lot of the online chatter is they either love it or hate it. There's apparently issues with accessibility in terms of, the readability through the transparency that's going on there. You can switch that off if you want, so it has a more frosted glass look. I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. I think the thing that I thought was interesting is that if you compare it to like the iOS 7 changeover, which was a dramatic change compared to the skeuomorphism that was happening beforehand, this is like, it's still the same. You're not going to get lost. More rounded corners overall in the interface, and it's like I don't know if calling it a new lick of paint is really fair either, but it's not really anything dramatically different.
Well, I don't know. I think for me, the drama is if it's making old devices perform better, that's exciting, and that's obviously got a lot to do with I think probably whatever Apple's doing at the back end, that they're not really communicating that well. But looks are looks. They come and they go, and people always, love it or hate it, especially when it comes to Apple. But the exciting thing is maybe this means I'll get, between 8 to 10 years for my iPhone 13.
The good old longevity, right? Absolutely. So just still sticking with iOS 26, this story caught my eye mainly because I'd actually seen John Prosser's original videos where he leaked the iOS interface that came with iOS 26 months ago. So I didn't think of much of it at the time, because you usually get some YouTubers doing this sort of thing. You kind of go, well, obviously he must know someone at Apple or something that showed him on the side. But now it's turned into a thing where Apple is suing him over the fact that he did that, but did it in a way that was suspect, at least according to them. And there's a couple of things to unpack in here too, because Apple's gone pretty heavy-handed with its civil lawsuit here, and alleging quite a few things that whether or not they're criminal or not, which is the idea that he induced via payment of a third party who had access to an Apple employee that could, get access to that Apple employee's development iPhone that had it's already getting complicated. But anyway, and that they got access to the phone, and then he was able to do some sort of screen share where he recorded all the interface elements so he could do his own mock-ups so that it didn't look like he actually was just doing the screen record that he did or whatever. And as far as this, I've seen his videos, and again, he's one of these guys that, you either like his shtick or you don't. He's kind of, I don't know if crass is the right word to put there. Crass is probably too harsh because it's not as if it's like completely foul how he comes across, but I remember some of his earlier videos literally had a toilet in the background, that probably gives you the impression of where he sits. And he was also infamous for leaking a bunch of a squared off Apple Watch design a few years ago that discredited him a bit when it turned out not to be true. So so there's a whole quagmire of stuff there with that sort of thing. But then there's also this other component that. The Apple lawsuit, I hate to break to anyone that loves Apple, but they are a corporation, and they are taking the heavy-handed approach here. And it kind of feels like, given that, this guy might be getting some decent ad money through YouTube, but I don't think he's got the kind of money that would sustain a months or years long lawsuit against a corporation the size of Apple. And if he were to lose, he'd be really done at the end of it, and it kind of comes across more like an intimidation tactic, because I don't know if they would have had the same approach if it was like the Wall Street Journal or some other big entity that had funds behind them to support a sustained litigation.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think probably the base behind Apple's allegations and the nature of the allegations, that there's a payment, that there's a chain, is to show that there's proof of, I guess, what they would term espionage.
Trade secrets. And I guess that's what they're getting at. Of course, whether or not they can prove any of this and whether or not any of it's true is another matter altogether. But if you make that claim, then at least you've got a case, I guess. And to be fair to Apple here, you would expect that they must have some evidence or some smoking gun, because I don't think they could mount an allegation like this without some sort of, I don't know, at least what they presume is evidence. But it's interesting, really, because at the end of the day, this isn't as if he's revealed that Steve Jobs has got an iPod in his pocket. It's it's a design. Is it functionality? You could tell me this better. You probably studied a bit more, but it doesn't really, to me, give away any trade secrets. It just tells me what the next iteration of Apple's, GUI is going to look like. And to be honest, as an Apple user, a very long-term Apple user, I don't care. Apple changes and Microsoft and Google change these things on me all the time, and I just have to put up with it. So seeing a static version of what my phone might look like, as indeed you have for us quite legally at the start of this cast, showing us the beta version for iOS 26. It's great. That's what it looks like. I don't know how anyone can get any advantage out of that apart from having their curiosity satisfied. Absolutely. Well, we'll watch where the story goes, because Pross has categorically denied that it went down that way, whatever that means. And I have to imagine that, like I said, I am curious as to whether or not Apple is trying to use a massive stick here just to deter people. That's another thing that I'm curious about.
I would say that there must be, part of that in there, as much as I think they must believe that there must be some case to answer, even if they don't have a complete case.
Absolutely. All right, so just changing tack, I saw this video the other day, why did our friends stop posting on social media? And, I think we've talked about this before, about whether or not there'd be some sort of disenchantment with the whole social media thing, writ large among the society or whatever. Obviously, people are still posting on social media. But it's an interesting point, because some of the ideas that came up in this video I saw were around not that it was a backlash per se, but that people just stopped using it because either the value proposition was there, it just wasn't worth doing, it wasn't worth wasting time on. Not just from a privacy point of view, but also that there's no point, because what you post ends up not actually getting delivered to feeds, because what is actually getting delivered to people's feeds is, paid content. And now it's effectively going to AI generated content, and we're not even seeing what our friends are up to these days, so there's no point. I thought that was an interesting angle that I guess maybe we hadn't considered.
I think that's definitely an angle. I mean, when an algorithm is selecting the content for you effectively and has decided what you're interested in, you become passive. And I think the initial excitement for us, all of us, in fact, the whole world, when we hit peak Facebook back in 2014, 2015, was that we were creating content and it looked marvelous and everyone loved it. Everyone was seeing us do whatever we were doing. And I think that was the excitement. And of course, since Facebook sort of went public, and we've had advances in every aspect of online advertising and the algorithms and the platforms behind it, what we've really got is a very high-end content delivery system now, which is little social, big media. So it's flipped around, and as we were talking about before, it's almost gone back to the point where now on social media you're actually passive. You're passively consuming other content, and as you've just pointed out, quite often not from your friends, colleagues or peers, just from anyone who paid a dime.
Absolutely. Just watch where those likes are coming from. That's all I say.
So, and I think the other side of that is that there's less and less incentive, and of course, it's been ratcheted up. The level of content has been ratcheted up to a point where us, even with the best filters, we can't compete anymore with the high-end influencers. So they've actually superseded us. Influencers started off as people like, the general social media population who had something of interest to say to attract followers. But now they've become such a niche, high-end product. Influencers have to be the best of the best of the best, using the best of the best of the best. That it doesn't really leave any room for the rest of us.
And the other thing that was interesting that they pointed out is that it's not that people have necessarily stopped doing this on their phones. They've just migrated to group chats and that sort of thing to do this sort of thing.
If you want to share photos of your family, you only want to share photos of your family with your family.
Yeah. Or people that or close friends or whatever.
Or people that are actually in the photos.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And just finally, I couldn't let this one go. Completely different track again. I mean, maybe it's a disaster. I don't know. I don't think so. I think we'll be fine. Who would have thought that the Earth doesn't spin exactly the same amount of time, on its axis, and as it's going around the sun, like it's not 100% exactly like what it should be on a 24-hour clock. But this story about the Earth spinning faster is leading timekeepers to consider an unprecedented move, like is an obvious clickbait headline. We're talking about the Earth going at a whack by a couple of milliseconds or something, and the cumulative effect of that is either if it's going faster, you subtract a leap second, or you add a leap second if the Earth's spinning slower, which happened decades ago, I think. So, I mean, the traction that it gets, like, using the clickbait headline to get it out there, but the story itself is actually quite interesting. It's just another astronomy fact that maybe you wouldn't consider in terms of that there are random little things that happen all the time. And also the other thing that was obviously interesting was just revisiting the concept of atomic clocks and how they're used, and that's how they are able to determine this sort of thing.
Well, that's right. I thought it was funny because in that article, there's almost a throwaway line. And the fact is this timing actually doesn't matter at all whatsoever, except for the fact our whole world is run by clocks. and the timing, the positioning, and all of the technology which we enjoy today, from our payment system through to communications, everything relies on the Earth being on time. And so a little bit of drift here and there that can cause big trouble.
I mean, I feel like maybe the Y2K bug was the thing that really highlighted this for people who look after this stuff. But I'm sure that it comes up in an article like this, but the reason we don't hear about that kind of bug anymore is probably because they're building in factoring all of this in now and making these kinds of adjustments. It's even like in other areas like satellites in orbit that are actually go slightly out of whack time-wise because thanks to Einstein's general theory of relativity that they go out of whack a little bit because the gravity's different and is causing effectively a time distortion between us and the satellite that we would never know about because they're always correcting for this stuff.
I know, it's unbelievable to think that our artificial world now is being affected by what's very natural for our solar system and probably the whole universe. It's crazy.
Absolutely. All right, we might wrap it up there. I'm now thinking of, devouring astronomy docs now for the rest of the afternoon. I mean, it is fascinating. And I always love it that maybe it's one of those things that, refreshes into the media landscape every now and then just to remind us about some cool fact or whatever about how our world works.
Well, that's right. I mean, the world in which we live is a very complicated place. And, I don't think often enough that those in power actually think about things like, isn't it amazing that the weather isn't the same all over the planet at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. Alrighty, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.